I mean, it's just gonna keep marching out that way to, up through Louisville, and then they'll hit up there through, Cornelia. Everest will become, all built up. Thank you, Jess. And then, eventually they're gonna cover all those mountains. Exactly. I don't know if anybody is on Zoom.
Doesn't look like it.
It doesn't look like it. So I'll tell you what, you wanna give them like 5, 10 minutes, we'll get everybody in here. But yeah, you hit it at the right time, you'll be able to make a killing on that place of Flower Branch. Cause everybody wants to move in there. Hopefully. It's, good school district, nice junior wife, you said.
We have actually a newborn.
Yeah.
So thanks. She's gonna turn 4 weeks on Wednesday.
She's Brandon.
Yes.
What kind?
Hattie Marie or Hattie. Yeah, we're gonna call her Hattie.
That's
Wait,
good.
are you related to Dina?
Yeah.
Okay, cause I heard that name. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So
Did you make her a grandmother? Did she have a grandmother?
she's a grandmother now.
Oh my goodness.
So we call her Gigi now because of the daughter and everything.
Yeah.
So, but yeah.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah, I can't wait, so.
Good. Real estate's a very rewarding career. It's a fun industry to be in. I've done this for last Friday. I've been an attorney for 4 years, and Friday was my 4-year anniversary. And then being in the industry, I was in it for about 4 years before that, a total of 8 years doing, being in this kind of line of work. And it's fun. You'll like it.
Can I ask you this too? So like, when you work for an attorney and everything, do you learn the general, of everything, and then do you have to learn off, like, you're going to real estate, so do you have to learn off real estate more, or do you just already know everything?
So when you go to law school, you learn every law enforcement. I mean, you learn every area of law. Like I had to take classes on criminal law. I took classes on torts, which is personal injury, things like that. I took divorce, family law is what they call that, constitutional law, bankruptcy. Took classes on every single thing that I had to learn. The bar exam encompasses all of that. And then when I got out, I just said, hey, my main focus will be on real estate. If I wanted to tomorrow, though, I could go into a courtroom and represent somebody on a murder trial if I wanted to.
Or like healthcare.
Or healthcare, yeah. Or, I can do somebody's divorce, and write somebody's will for them. Things like that. Awesome. In Georgia, you don't have to specialize. You can practice any and every law, or you can pick one, and I just so happen to pick real estate. It's a pretty friendly, it's a pretty nice area of the law. Everybody's pretty friendly. Nobody, let me put it this way, if somebody dies on my watch, I have gone so far off the rails that there wasn't anything we could fix. It was gonna happen, there was nothing I could do to stop it. In other areas of the law, not so much. Yeah. So, looks like we got 2 folks on Zoom. Can y'all hear me? It looks like,
I can hear you.
you can hear me? Okay, perfect. Good. We're gonna give it about 5 more minutes, and then we will, we'll get cranked up. Emily, let me ask you a question. Is there a way you can get an email out to these 2 ladies? I'm gonna send you over, I'm gonna scan you a copy of this right here, and then you will send it over to them. Ladies, I'm gonna get Emily to send you a settlement statement, and we're gonna go over that towards the end of the program today.
You got on them?
Yeah.
Not, right?
Yeah.
Yes, sir. All right.
Yeah, but it's literally like another chapter, like starting over here, chapter in line, go for it.
Yeah, in the right place, yeah, it's gonna be eager and just attend as many classes. I think that's what I really love about KW is they offer are just like a wealth of knowledge, like the other agents will come and teach classes, like they just wanna pour into each other and help each other out as much as possible and. And I'm sure you're learning like everything about it, but the ALC is like the council of, you know, some of the agents that volunteer their time and they'll teach classes and I don't wanna speak for them, but I've heard them say it a million times, like they're obviously a resource for you, a lot of them are veterans in the industry. And have a lot of knowledge to share. Let's see, yes, for.
Right here, we're gonna go over this side. Alright, y'all, Emily's gonna send y'all an email here in just a second. It is gonna be a copy of the settlement statement. Once we get through the class today, I think we're gonna have a little bit of time. I'm gonna try and give us about 15-20 minutes. We're gonna go over it. We're gonna go over settlement statement. That way we can, learn how to read that. That's probably gonna be your big ticket item when it comes to closing. That's gonna be the document that shows all the money, that's gonna be the document that shows, your commission, that's gonna be the document that shows a lot of very important, information. And I wanna make sure that y'all have that kind of down pat, and how that works when you hit closing date. We're gonna give it about, looks like 3 more minutes. We'll go ahead and start about 1:10. We'll get on there. Y'all out there in Zoom, is anybody over there new agent, somebody brand new, or if y'all had a couple of closings or anything like that?
I'm new since August, no closings yet.
Okay, Kathy, that's good, because that's gonna, like I said, this class is geared for folks who have never really had a closing, or have had 1 or 2 closings, and just need to learn a little bit more, or want to learn a little bit more about kind of the process of what happens once I get a contract. We're gonna go over that today, and hopefully get everybody a little more up to speed on what's happening.
Can I do this?
Yes, sir, you sure can. You can mark on that. In fact, I recommend you mark on it. You got a pen and everything, right? Yeah. Perfect. Thank you. Got about 2 minutes left. Go ahead and go back and drop close the door too. Just because I can't be a little loud, I won't. It'll be like, why's that guy over there screaming? Shouldn't run the law. Go ahead and get started. Who even come on for a second? Right. Y'all, it's about, like I said, it's about 1 to let's go ahead and get started. Y'all, my name's Carter Tenney. I'm an attorney with Michael and Gray. Usually out of our Gainesville office. Today I'm down here. We're going to teach a class. Today's class is entitled Clothing 101, a general overview. like we were talking about a few seconds ago, is a class to kind of get agents who have had no closings or very few closings, more up to speed on kind of what to expect after you've secured a contract. You've got a binding contract, what happens after that? Well, we're gonna tell you about it today. I wanted to introduce myself. I also wanted to introduce Emily Raymond here today. I think a lot of y'all know her. She is our ASR here at Keller Williams Chat North. ASR being Agent Service Representative. I think that's what it stands for. If y'all come into this office, you will see Emily. She is a wonderful resource. She can tell you what's going on with your closing. She can kind of get you to know when things are scheduled. Definitely come on by if you're ever in the office, meet her. She's definitely somebody you need to know. Her and Amy usually run out of here, and I think Amy is in Vegas this week, so she's out there, hopefully having a good time. And while she's out there, we'll take over this class for her. Y'all, real quick before we get much further, I do want to introduce our firm, McMichael & Gray. We are a local closing firm. We do closings. That's what we handle. If you've got commercial closings, if you've got residential real estate closings, anything you got, we can handle. We have 15 locations across the state of Georgia. I think we go as far south as Savannah, if I'm not mistaken. We've got an office down there, I think. And then as far north, I think Mike Keller Williams up in Clayton area is the furthest north. You go all the way out to Carrollton. We've got places in Conyers on the south side. We've got our main hub over in Gwinnett. We've also got locations in the surrounding areas. We've got locations in Alabama, Florida, Tennessee, North and South Carolina as well. So if you've got an agent that is in one of those locations and you can refer, please let them know that we're out. We'd love to do business with y'all. We can close at any of those locations. Just let us know what your needs are, and we can find the closest office to you. So, just a little shout out to McMichael & Gray. Please let us know if you need anything, and we'll go ahead and dive on into this class. So, from what I hear, we've got no closings on the books yet. We've got Kathy, no closings on the books yet, but I promise you they're coming. And then Jennifer and Estrella. I don't really know where y'all stand on closings, but you probably fall somewhere in between none and a few, which is good. The big thing with closings is you need to get you a contract. So that's where we're going to start today, is in this scenario, we've already got us a binding contract. For those of y'all who are new, your purchase and sales agreement, that's going to be what y'all are dealing with. I'm sure you've seen this document before in some sort of training capacity. This is your big ticket item. This is what you are going to get filled out by your buyers, by your sellers. You're going to have all the information in here filled out. Get familiar with this document. I cannot tell you how important that is. You need to go ahead and get you a copy of it. I'm sure Keller Williams has a copy. If you need me to get you a training copy, I can. Go through, read it, get very familiar with this. You know, it has, this is, you know, like I said, the big ticket item. You need to know what's going on in here so that you can articulate, one, to your client what's going on, and heaven forbid, if something wrong happens, what the answer is. So make sure you get you a copy of this. Read over it. I can't tell you how many times I've had agents that will say, hey, I've been in practice for 20 plus years, 30 plus years, who haven't read it. Go ahead, you can really be on top of your game, and you can really get you can really want some brownie points to some of your clients by having in-depth knowledge of this contract. So just, if you need a copy of that, I'm sure Keller Williams can get you one. If not, please let me know. I'll get you a training copy. And read over it. Before you go to bed at night, check out a couple of sections. If you got some time, you're in the office, or if you're at home or something, say, hey, I need to read over the guard contract. So you've got your signed contract, but what happens next? Sweet, I've got a contract. I'm done. That's all I have to do. that was the bulk of what you had to do. You had to get that signed, you had to find somebody who wanted to sell, you had to find somebody who wanted to buy, you had to get them together, you got everything signed. The next thing that happens is you need to get that contract over to whoever you have selected as your closing attorney. Whether that's me, one of the other, wonderful closing firms that we have in Atlanta, or whatever location you're in, you've got folks, over at O'Kelly, you got folks over at a couple other closing firms. Whoever you get that to, they do need a copy of that contract, because I can't start working on it if I don't know it exists. I know I've had a lot of folks say, hey, we went binding, we're good to go. Well, good, I'm glad you did. I need to go over and review it, because that's my next job, is to review that contract and make sure everything is signed properly, make sure we've got the right parties on the contract, and to go ahead and open up a file. I need to have an actual copy of that contract. To use Emily as an example here, what you would do is you shoot that bad boy on over to her, say.
I'll actually write up our team email that we can send it to, and it's got our whole team on it, pre-closers.
There we go. Go ahead and send that on over to this email. That way we'll take it and we'll start a file. So when it comes to sending that contract over, a lot of times you will have exhibits. Depending on if you got financing, depending on if it's an all cash sale, depending on, if you're doing some disclosures or anything like that, you will have exhibits to that contract. I need those exhibits as well. Go ahead, make sure you've got all of that filled out and sent over to me. It's usually best to go ahead and send it in one big email if you can. Go ahead and include all the attachments or scan it in as one big attachment. But don't forget to send over those exhibits. If they have to come over later, that's fine, but just make sure I do get a hold of them. Because if I don't have them in your file, then more or less they don't exist, or I don't know they exist. So just always remember to get a copy of that over to your closing attorney. All right. Another thing with that too, a lot of y'all, and I know Keller Williams does it a lot, is pay it closes, things like that. Make sure you get those over to me as well. That way I can always document them, and then at the end of the closing, when I'm cutting out checks, I can get you exactly what you need, and I can split it the way it needs to be split. One more thing while we're talking about it, make sure we get those ABA signed, y'all. I know that is a very important thing. If you are representing buyer or seller, we do need to have that signed by all parties, those affiliated business arrangement disclosures. Make sure you include that when you send the contract over to us as well. Because if you don't, you will be getting phone calls from us asking for a copy of that. So just go ahead, nip that in the bud, send it on over to us. So we've got the contract, we've got it over to the closing attorney. What's going on now? I'm done, right? I've already sent over all my stuff to you. I can go ahead and sit back and relax. No. I know you said, I know you think, hey, sweet, I've got all the paperwork signed. You need to keep in constant communication with everybody. You need to, if you represent the buyer, you need to go ahead and make sure that they're okay. Always, have their interest in mind. Make sure if you're representing the seller that you're checking up on them from time to time. Make sure that you have communication with me as the closing attorney. If a new addendum comes up, if a new amendment comes up, if you've got an exhibit you gotta send over, or you just got your pay at close signed off on, something like that, make sure you keep up with me, keep sending me documents, keep that line of communication open, because that's how you get to the closing table and have a good closing, because you are in constant contact with the parties. Could you say, hey, I'm gonna lay down, I'm good, I've got everything over to it, we're gonna lateral this over to Carter, he'll take care of it. You can, but you always wanna remember that client, you won't repeat customers, and you want them to have good things to say about you. And a lot of times, they need some hand holding just as well. I mean, it's a big purchase, or, they're selling their house, and it's the first time they've come through, selling, and they really need somebody to be there with them to handle, the emotional side of it as well as the contractual side of it. So just always be in constant communication with whatever parties that are involved. So remember that. So, we've got the contract. I've got it over to me, I've opened a file. When I've opened that file, I will order what's called title. Title to a property includes everything that has gone on with that property. If it's been sold, if it's been mortgaged, if there are easements, if there are any kind of other conveyances that have happened to that property. I'll call over to a lot of times my title examiner, or I'll send it over to my title team at Michael and Gray, and I'm getting a list of all that. I want a printout of that. Because that's called your title, title to the property, title obtained, rather. And what I'm gonna do as the attorney is, we'll review it. I gotta make sure that there's no breaks in that title. I gotta make sure, if you're representing the seller, I gotta make sure that that seller actually owns that property. I've gotta make sure, that there's no mortgages on that property. If you said there was no mortgages, if there is a mortgage, I gotta make sure that I can get a payoff for that. Because I gotta go ahead and satisfy that old mortgage before we have a new person take hold of that property. I'm gonna check for things like easements. You don't really see them a lot in this area, but a lot of times when you get further up north, you'll have stuff like driveway easements. Hey, I gotta cut across somebody's land in order to get to my house. Things like that. You'll have a well agreement if somebody's owner shared a well, something like that. I've gotta make sure that those agreements are solidified, because on down the line, in that time chain, we have to make sure that everybody has access to what they need. So that's kind of what I'm doing as soon as I hit that, as soon as I get that contract. There's also, depending on if you are going to have a buyer that is getting financing, there'll be a lender involved. Now, if you're representing a buyer, which a lot of y'all do, you need to be on and keeping in contact with the buyer to make sure that they are talking to their lender. Most people can't buy a house outright. They don't have the cash to do it outright. They gotta get some sort of finance. And in order to get that financing, they've got to apply for it. I know here, we've got wonderful guys, Matt and Hunter, and I've got all those guys over here who do, with now movement mortgage, Onward mortgage. Those guys, you know, you've got to apply for that. Make sure that your buyer is sending in their documentation to the lender so that they can go ahead and get it processed. Because the worst thing is you get through title, everything's reviewed, everything's ready to go, and the lender is saying, hey, I'm waiting on documentation from the buyer. He hadn't sent me his 2 last pay stubs. Or hey, he hasn't sent over his W-9. Hey, I can't get a hold of anybody over at where he's supposedly works to verify employment. You want to go ahead and say, hey man, keep in contact with your lender, keep on them so that you can go ahead and close within, you know, usually that 30-day period that you want to close. So those 2 things are going on. What else is going on, bro? Move the file. Talk to your lender. The other thing I want to talk about during this time frame, again, when we're talking about communication, things come up during closing. They always do. Whether you've got, you know, they went and inspected the property and, hey, there's a toilet that's, you know, running in the upstairs bathroom. I need a plumber to come out and fix it. Or, hey, I went and this guy needs to request a signing before we close. We gotta do an amendment for that. Or, you know, we gotta let everybody know, hey, this is what we're doing. Amendments will come up from time to time during the contract period, from right up until we close. Some days we will sign an amendment right at the closing table. That has happened before. Make sure that if you've got any of those amendments signed, get them over to me. That's gonna be a constant thing to be mindful of it. Because on the day of closing, if we've got something on that settlement statement that I need to collect for, that I haven't collected for, but you didn't send me the amendment for it, I didn't know to collect for it, we're gonna have to go back, I'm gonna have to update some paperwork, possibly even get the lender involved. And that's just gonna slow the closing. So always, again, keep that line of communication open. So, if you're representing a buyer before closing, a lot of times, or should every time, you will get a document from the lender called a closing disclosure. Okay, that's something that your lender is required to send over to your buyer. Once they get a hold of that closing disclosure, call them up, go over the numbers with them. It's a pretty simple document to read over. If you ever need help with one, please give me a call, give us a call. We'll help you, we'll walk you through it on how to talk to them about it. If you're representing the seller, the firm, I know we do this, we'll send you a copy of the settlement statement, the seller side closing statement. And, you know, if you represent the seller, go over it with them. We're actually, like I said, here in a little bit, gonna go over an off the settlement statement together. And then that way you'll kind of know what to do, how to talk to your buyer or your seller about what's going on this settlement statement. It's always good to know how to talk about the numbers. That's 95% of what everybody wants. All right, so we've signed a binding contract, we've gotten it over to me, I've checked on title, the lenders come through, said we're good to go, we're ready to finance this thing. We're at closing day, we're at the closing table. So we finally made it. So what's gonna happen, you know, a general overview of what's gonna happen on that day. So we need to get everybody to the closing table. That's the big thing. Always make sure you coordinate with your client where the closing is gonna be. Reach out to me for addresses, reach out to your attorney for addresses to make sure that you know what office that's gonna be at. Like I said, with Michael and Gray, we've got 15 different locations, and a lot of times people kind of guess what office they're gonna be at instead of calling to check and confirm. I've got an office in Gwinnett and in Beaufort, and you would be surprised how many times people should be at Gwinnett and they're at Beaufort, or how many times they're at Beaufort and they should be at Gwinnett. Always feel free to give us a call, confirm stuff, we'll pick up the phone, we'll get you to where you need to be. And that goes for, in all honesty, most closing attorneys, they have multiple locations, make sure you got the right one, because you want to be showing up, to the right place on the big day. The other thing that we've got is we've got a few things that we need to bring to the closing, okay? One of the biggest things that you're gonna need to bring to the closing is your cash to close, or your buyer's gonna have to bring their cash to close, okay? We need that in the form of wire 95% of the time. If they've got closing proceeds that they need to wire that at the very least the day before. Most of the time, your lender is gonna come through and have told the buyer, hey, you need to bring $90,000 to close. Cool, that's not a problem. You gotta get that $90,000 to me. The way we do that is through a wire transfer. You can send it a week early, you can send it 2 days early, you can send it the day before. The time you don't want to send it is after you've already hit the closing date. Once you get to that closing table, if you've got to wire funds, we're holding up the closing down. A lot of times that's gonna throw the mood of everything off. If everything's going smooth, in the closing table, hey, I've got to run over to Bank of America real quick to send a wire. All right, now we've already automatically pushed this closing back around about 30, 45 minutes. Make sure you stay on your buyer, say, hey, I sent you money, please go ahead and go send it. Tell them to reach out to us, we can get them some closing instructions, wire instructions, so that they can take that on over to the bank and get that wire on over to us. Always make sure of that. Another thing in this case that you can bring to closing that also involves money is gonna be your earnest money. So the neat thing about this relationship that we have with Keller Williams is most of the time Keller Williams is holding ours. Sweet, that's perfect, because you're inside the building. I can walk 10 feet that way and talk to somebody and get a copy of the earnest money check. Perfect. If you are going outside of that Keller Williams, and you're closing at another location, say, you know, a Gwinnett office, somewhere like that, grab a hold of that earnest money check and take it with you. Now, a lot of the times, if you're closing with us, if it might be great, the cool thing about this relationship is I can still go down 10 feet it takes me to go get an earth money check, apply it to your file while you're up to the net, that's, not gonna be an issue at all. The thing is, when you're not closing with me, you close with another firm, and that firm, and you're nowhere near that color wings. Make sure that night before you've got your earth money check, so when you pull it to the closing table, you can slide it on over to the closing attorney, and he can take care of it for you. What are the other things we need to bring to the closing? One of the biggest things is gonna be identification. Okay? Buyers and sellers both need to bring IDs. Now, I've been sitting here talking to y'all for about 20 minutes now. Y'all are probably tired of hearing my voice, so I'm gonna let y'all answer a few things. What are some forms of IDs that I can take? Driver's license, passport. Anybody out there in Zoom wanna throw something in there? Fine, if you don't, it's fine. We'll go with driver's license, passports. What else can we take? We take a green card. Any kind of government issued ID is what we're looking for here. At the very least, tell them to bring the driver's license. I have had several closings where I've gone in to get driver's licenses from people, and I know they drove there, but they don't have it on them because they weren't told to bring it. And it always baffles me because I'm like, how did you get here? Didn't you drive? But anyway, always make sure you've got some form of ID on you, preferably 2 forms. So that's a good thing to bring with you. Keys. Keys are extremely important. If you've got at least a key to give to the buyer at closing, that always helps out. Or at least know where the keys are at so that you can direct your buyer to them or you can get them for them. If you can, bring them to the closing table. Some other important things that may come up during the closing that you want to bring to the table, just if you have them. This is not an exhaustive list. This isn't the end all be all here, but if you do have them, it's always good to bring them to a closing. Things like menus. I've had a lot of homes that have some very high-tech equipment in the house. I went to Home Depot the other day and I saw a TV that was mounted into a refrigerator. And houses now have stuff like that. People need the manuals to that, because I know I couldn't figure out how to work it. Make sure you bring stuff like that. Manuals to garage doors, manuals to appliances, manuals to, mostly it's gonna be appliances and things like that. Bring those are always nice to have. A list of names and numbers for service providers in the area. Sometimes you'll have to get trash service. Sometimes there's multiple competing trash services. You've got folks like AT&T, you've got Comcast, what's in the neighborhood. If you're on further up north, that may change to people like Windstream and other folks like that. But you want to have at least a list you can give to the buyers of, hey, these are the guys that provide us services, give them a call. Names and numbers of neighbors is always a good thing. Again, you don't have to have that, but it is something nice that if you're representing a buyer and say, hey, I talked to the seller, Miss Jenkins, who lives next door, she's a real sweet lady. She'll watch your house while you go down to the beach every other week. Something like that. It's always something good to make the buyers feel more welcome. And once again, it makes you look really good to the buyer, and that'll bring you some repeat business. Another thing that's always good to have, if you've got any kind of receipts for anything, and if you've got any kind of repair loans. If somebody had to come out, service the garage door a couple of times, it's good to have that service log saying, hey, these are the guys I used, this is the technician that came out, give them a call if something happens. If you've got any kind of warranties, those are always good to have as well. Make sure that that kind of gets on over to the buyer. Again, that list isn't exhaustive, and it's just good practice to have stuff like that. Show up early. Show up early when it comes to closings, because as always, something will come up. That Murphy's Law, it still applies to the closing, I always recommend about 15 minutes, 15, 20 minutes early. That gives you enough time where you're not sitting in the lobby too long. If nobody else is at that close table, they can probably go ahead and move you on in, get you started. But it does apply a little bit of a cushion in case, hey, somebody's running late or, something, we're not gonna end up pushing the closing back. So always make sure you show up probably about 15 minutes early. So we're at the table, closing started. What are we looking at? The big thing that we're gonna look at again is the document that I go over first in every closing that I've ever done is the settlement statement. Because again, this is the big ticket item. The things we're gonna look at, we're gonna check and make sure our sales price is right. We're gonna make sure our seller credit is right, and we're representing the seller, and if you're representing the buyer too, because you wanna make sure they get all the money they asked for, or that was supposed to be given to them in the contract. And the most important thing that we're gonna look at, commissions. Y'all don't work for free. Y'all work for that credit. You need to make sure that you get every penny that you owe. So you need to check that commissions label on there, that commission section, to make sure that you were getting paid what you agreed to be paid. Okay? So that's what we'll start with right there. Another thing that I want to say before we move on into the settlement and that, and settlement statement going over that document, is make sure that if there is a problem, you communicate that there is a problem, okay? Don't wait till the end of the closing to tell me, hey, by the way, that seller's contribution, it wasn't $1,500, it's supposed to be $15,000. Once we funded and we've all dispersed and everybody's walked out of that closing, it's not the time to be bringing these things up. You bring it up to me as soon as we hit the closing table partner. You can draw your attention right here. Seller credit should be 15,000, should not be 1,500. I'm gonna go, I'm gonna check everything that I've got, check all my amendments, I'm gonna check the contract, I'm gonna see what happened, make sure I didn't miss something. And if we get the documents that we need, I'm gonna fix that document so that everybody gets what they ordered. Always bring up issues before we get to the closing table. Okay? Or at the very least, while we're going over the document that we're going over. If somebody's name is misspelled, if a number is wrong, if I've got the wrong name on there, let me know. I can't tell you how many times I've gone through a closing. We've gone through a settlement statement, we've signed off on every single document. Somebody will look at me and say, is it cool that my name was misspelled on those documents? We've just gone through a 30-minute closing. We have signed off on all those documents and we didn't raise no objections to anything until we were all fixing to walk out. Stop me as soon as you see it, because that's the time we need to correct it, because then we're saving time, we're making sure that we stay within, that hour time limit that we have for a closing. So, and don't ever feel, any type of way about objecting to something at a closing. Don't go ahead and speak up. We want to, don't think you're gonna offend anybody. Because let me tell you, it's way easier to shout out something at the closing table than it is to, try and come back and fix something after everything's said and done. So, we've got the contract, we've ordered title, we've got the lender taken care of, we've gotten to the closing table, we've checked all our documents, everything looks good, everybody signed off on stuff, we're done, the lender has funded this transaction, we're fixing to walk out the door. What's the last thing that we're gonna do as agents? We're gonna check the most important document in the world to y'all, which is the check that I hand you for your commissions. You're gonna check it and make sure that it matches what was on your DA. If you got that, your DA or your pay close, personal agreement, what DA stand for. You're gonna make sure that I've got you every penny you need, because as soon as you walk out of my site with that check, there ain't nothing I can do. Once you hit the parking lot, if you look at it and say, hey, Carter, once again, man, I don't know what it is with numbers, but man, it shouldn't have been $1,500, it should be $15,000, that should be my commission. I need you to fix it. Once you walk out of my side with that check, there ain't really anything I can do. I'm gonna have to put a stop payment on that check. It's gonna take about 2 days. After that 2 days expires, then I can cut you a new check. But if you were at the table and you look at it, and you stop me, and you haven't left my site yet, I will walk back, I will cut you a brand new check, and you'll be walking out of there with your money that day. I can't tell you how many times that has happened during the closing where somebody didn't get me a DA or somebody had some sort of incorrect information on a pay close. And then I've cut a check and they walk out to the parking lot, they come back in the office 20 minutes later and they want a new check. I can't do that. You know, that's where we've got to wait that 48 hours for the top pay. Y'all don't want to do that. I don't want y'all to have to do that. So make sure you check the check. Y'all, that's a 50,000 foot overview of kind of what happens at a closing. So, again, that's a very 50,000 foot overview of it. There are some more nuances to it. If you have any questions about it, or hey, Carter, can you tell me a little bit more about any process that goes on during the closing? Please feel free to call me. Let Emily know, tell her to call me, or get in contact with me. I would love to explain it to you. Just let me know. I'm a resource for you here as well. We've got about 15 minutes left. Let's go ahead and talk about this settlement statement. Now, I want everybody to pull this out with me. We're going to go over it together. Because again, this is the big ticket item. This is what controls this closing. I'm going to go ahead and sit right here and go over it with you. Whoops, I'll get that in a minute. So most settlement statements are going to look pretty similar. You may see them called an Alta settlement statement. Some closing firms will call it a master settlement statement. Some people just call it a settlement statement depending on where you're closing. But for all intents and purposes, it'll have the same information on it. It may not look exactly like my settlement statement, but it will have the same information. So the first thing up here at the top that we're going to be looking at is usually you'll have the name of the closing firm that you're closing. In this case, we're using McMichael & Gray. If you get to the closing table and that name looks unfamiliar, you may be in the wrong place. So make sure that that matches up with who you know you were closing, or you think you were closing. Under that, I've got a file number. Most of the time, that's some internal file number that is specific to me. That is the file number that I use to look up all your information on the specific transaction that we are doing, okay? So if you ever call me up, you want information about what's going on with your closing, have that file, because that's how I look it up. You will know that file number before closing. I'll tell you that. You will be able to use that file number and tell it to me in order to get information. Under that, we've got our office, escrow officer. We've got our settlement location. So in this case, we got Amy on there. And under that, we're closing at the big office up in Gates. Okay, we're closing tomorrow. Under that, we've got our property address. That's a checkpoint. Y'all want to check that, make sure that that property address matches the contract, okay? Make sure that it is the property that you thought you were closing on. If it is not, that's what we need to holler. Under that, we've got our borrower. In this case, we've got Bo Byron. Make sure that that matches your buyer. Make sure that his name is spelled correctly. Make sure that that's the actual guy. Make sure he's the guy who's at the closing table. Under that, we got the seller. We got John Smith as trustee of his trust over there. So a lot of times you will have entities selling property. That's perfectly fine. Happens all the time. LLCs will sell property, trusts will sell property, estates will sell property. This is just this is a general settlement statement here. That can also just be a regular person as well. That could be Carter Tenney in his individual capacity. Perfectly fine to see that if you have some sort of capacity behind that. Under that, we've got our lender. We've got loans. Make sure that that lender matches whoever your buyer is using to take out his loan. And then finally, we got our settlement date and our disbursement date. Sometimes you'll see the disbursement date, it'll be a different date than the settlement date. A lot of times that's for like refinances where you've got that 3-day right of decision for that. So, but most of the time, if you've got a property that is closing, in this case, March 22nd of 2023, that disbursement date will also be March 22nd of 2023. So let's go ahead and dive on into the actual document. We've got two sides. We've got a seller side, and we've got a borrower side. We're gonna go ahead and start with the seller side. That's how I usually start, because there's less stuff to go over. So the first thing that we're looking at the sales price of the property. That's a check mark for y'all. Y'all represent the seller. Make sure that that number matches what you were selling that property for. It matches what's in that contract or what's ever on the amendment that you amended the sales price for. Make sure that that matches. The next thing under that we're gonna deal with is gonna be our seller credit, okay? That's gonna be whatever the seller is giving the buyer towards their closing costs, okay? Excuse me, make sure that that matches what you agreed to in your contract. Come on down under prorations and adjustments. As you can see on here, we've got prorations for the HOAs, we got prorations for city and county taxes. This section down through here, a lot of times that will change. Sometimes you'll see it under the debit side for your seller. Sometimes you'll see it under the credit. It's just gonna depend on whether tax bills come out, okay? If the tax bills have not come out yet, what's gonna happen is the seller is gonna pay for their time that they've lived on the property. They're gonna give that as a credit to the buyer. If they, tax bills have already came out, we're gonna collect that tax bill, and the buyer is actually gonna give the seller a credit for the time that they are gonna be living on the property. So just something to remember, that will flop depending on the time of year and depending on the tax bills that have come out, okay? So, something to be aware of. It is tax season right now, so you will see tax bills being collected for that closing right now. Y'all flip me to the second page. We're still looking on the seller side. We have a lot of blank space on the seller side. Because most of this stuff is gonna be for the borrower, because 95% of the time, the borrower is paying for the closing costs, they're paying the attorney's fees. They've got their lender's fees involved in there. They're gonna have more stuff on their side than your sellers are going to. We come down here to commissions, that's where you're usually gonna see your next line item for your seller, is going to be commissions. So, right under there, we've got our listing agent commission at 18,000. Flip me to this third page. We've got our selling agent commission on the back of it for $18,000. Okay? Check that every time. Make sure that that matches what you are supposed to be getting paid, okay? Check that commission section. Come on down under that, we got our payoffs. Typically your seller is gonna have some sort of payoff on a mortgage on a property. This is where we're gonna collect for that. And in this case, we can see on there that they actually have 2 mortgages on this property. The first one is gonna be a payoff for your first mortgage. The second one is gonna be a payoff for your second mortgage. The other things you'll see in that section are gonna be things like home equity lines of credit, any kind of other mortgage type products that they've got to pay off at closing, okay? You won't always have a mortgage on the property. If you don't have a mortgage on the property, they'll be blank, okay? You won't always have 2 on there. Most of the time, you probably will just have 1. Under that, we've got our miscellaneous section. There are a bunch of things that can go under miscellaneous, okay? For a seller, you may see things, like payoffs for liens. You may see things on there, payoffs to contractors for fixing stuff. You may see payoffs, for, again, I think I already said liens, payoff for contractors. Those are gonna be your big things. You'll see miscellaneous. They'll pay for an HOA letter and a home warranty as well as another very common thing you'll see. And then under that, when we're looking at seller, We're looking at the money due to the seller. That is what y'all seller is going to be walking away with. All right? That is the bottom line for your seller. A lot of times, the most closing firms, you will either be asked if you want a check or a wire for those proceeds. If they want a check, that's perfectly fine. If they want a wire, a lot of times you fill out a wire form for that closing attorney, they'll wire that money straight into the bank account. But that right there is bottom line. Make sure that that matches what your seller thought they would get. All right, we're gonna flip back over to the first page. We are gonna go over all buyer side real quick. So there's a lot more to go over on the buyer side, because like I said, they are usually paying your attorney's fees, and they're usually taking out some sort of loan. The bulk of it is going to be their, it's gonna be on their side of the document. So the first thing we got up there, just like on the seller side, we've got sales price of property, check it, make sure that it matches. Under that, we've got your loan amount. That is how much they're taking out on financing. Okay, make sure that that loan amount actually matches what they thought they were taking out on their loan. Under that, we've got seller credit. Buyer needs to check on that to make sure that that matches. And then under that, we got our prorations again for the same things for the seller. HOA dues, city taxes, and in this case, county taxes, okay? A lot of times, you won't have city taxes, some stuff, some properties are not within city limits, so you won't have to worry about city taxes. Every single one you will have county taxes on. So, under that, we're gonna talk about our loan charges. It's going to loans. Each one of these, under this heading, is a fee that the lender is charging to take out the loan. And they will differ depending on your lenders. Some lenders will have 1 or 2 charges. Some lenders will have up to 10 charges, or more maybe. The first thing we got up here, we've got 1% of our points. That's where he's buying down his interest rate. Under that, a processing fee. Again, that's going to be a lender fee where they're charging in order to create the loan. Under that, we've got our underwriting fee. That lender has to send everything over to their underwriting team to make sure that they can actually generate the loan. Under that, credit report fee, pretty standard fee, appraisal fee, pretty standard fee. We flip it again. We've still got some loan fees on there. We got a flood certification, tax service, BOE verification of employment. And then under that, we got the prepaid interest. Finally, an e-recording fee over there of $9.50. Each one of those, again, is a lender fee. If your buyer has questions about it, the person to talk to about that is going to be the loan officer, because they're going to be able to explain what those fees actually go to. The closing attorney doesn't generate those fees. They don't generate those charges. I can only tell you what the charges are for most of the time. Under that, we've got our impounds. Y'all, your impounds are the same thing as your escrow accounts. Most of the time, buyers will escrow away for 2 very important things. It's going to be your homeowner's insurance and your property taxes. The term escrows will be used interchangeably with the term impounds. So as we can see up here, we've got homeowner's insurance being escrowed away for. We've got $624.99. That's what the lender is collecting up front for 3 months worth of homeowner's insurance. Okay, they're putting that into the reserves, the escrow reserves. Under that, the same thing is happening with property taxes for city and county. Okay. Come on, under that, we got our title charges, our escrow settlement charges. Each one of these is one of my fees. This is my attorney's fees. Okay, these are my attorney's fees. So we've got, first thing, we've got usually a closing protection letter if they're getting title insurance, title examination fee, that's for me checking their title to make sure everything's clear. Under that, we've got a binder fee for the title insurance. Under that, we've got a post-closing fee of $75 because I have to pay them post-closers in order to break down these packages and send off the documents to lenders, send off notes to lenders, send off packages to lenders, to send out checks, things like that. You gotta pay them. Under that, I've got my attorney settlement fee, which is what you're paying me for. Under that, we got your owner's title insurance, we got your lender's title insurance. Okay? You're doing a cash deal, you won't see the lender's title insurance on there, you'll always see owners, okay, just something to be aware of. If you're doing a refinance, a lot of times you'll only see lenders on there, because, you know, you're creating a loan. So the lender's gonna want protection. Commissions, you may see that on the buyer side, and in the next coming years, you may see that more and more as a buyer pay closing costs, just depending on where certain court cases are gonna be decided and things like that. So in the next upcoming years, you may actually see commissions on the buyer side, so just be aware of that, okay? But for most of the time, it is customary that the seller pays for buyer and seller commissions as of right now. Like I said, there's a few things coming down the pipeline, that may change that. And y'all were looking on the final page, page 3, we've got our government recording trails. So every time a loan is generated, we gotta collect some fees for that. Every time we transfer property in the state of Georgia, we gotta collect fees for that as well. We've got our $50 recording fee, that's gonna be to record the new warranty deed, the new security deed. Under that, we've got our city, county stamp tax. That is gonna be for, you know, the transfer tax on that. Under that, GRMA fee, another recording fee for the state of Georgia, and then we've got the stamp tax under that, $600. Come under that, the next thing we're dealing with is miscellaneous. So under miscellaneous, again, it could be myriad of things. Most of the time, you're gonna have your homeowner's insurance in there, that's gonna be paid up for an entire year. I know what you're thinking, hey, we're also escrowing away for insurance, what's up with that? You pay for the first year in full, escrows picks up the tab the next year, because you have to fund the escrows, okay? So under that too, it looks like we've got an HOA initiation fee and we've got an HOA transfer letter. So those over there are pretty standard fees that the buyer may be paying for. The other thing to look for down there, a lot of times with gift funds, if mom and dad is sending $5,000 to the buyer in order to help them get the loan, you'll see it in that section as well. Come on under to the bottom down here, money due from the borrower. That's their cash at close. That's the amount they should have wired you before closing. That's the amount that y'all need to keep on them and make sure that they actually wire that over to me so that we can go ahead and fund this once we get through signing. Okay? Just something to be aware of. Those are the main things you need to be looking at. You need to take, if you got a copy of the settlement statement, like I said, look at it, go over it a couple of times, especially if you haven't had closing. Go over it, get familiar with it, that way you know generally what your client should be paying for, or what things they, you know, what they normally pay for. Gives you a good overview of the things that could come up at closing, and it gives you a good overview of what you need to be paying attention of at the closing table. Okay? That's pretty much it. We're finishing right on time, right here at 2 o'clock. If anybody has any questions, please feel free to ask me. Let me go ahead, and I think we're down to 2 folks. So I'm gonna go ahead and put my phone number on here as well, just in case y'all need anything. Feel free to call me. We got 404 291 1 4 4 0 1. Y'all, please feel free to call me. If you got a question, if you're out there and you're just got your first contract, Carter, I don't really know what to do, I don't know what to fill in, call me, we'll fill it in together. We'll get you set up. Does anybody have any questions while we're here? If I want to talk about anything more in depth while I'm here. Kathy, you got anything you want to talk about?
I think my current dilemma is whether a foreign national can contract what, because you're talking about ID, so they need some type of passport or green card.
Does he have government issued ID from wherever he's from?
Yes,
Okay, that'll work.
okay, as long as they have the funds, then we're good to go.
Yep.
Okay,
Now,
thank you, sir.
There'll be a few things to go over when he sells that property. He may run into some birthday issues when he goes to sell the property, but as far as buying it, shouldn't be a problem as long as he's got some sort of government ID that he can get to you. You should be good to go.
Right, okay, thank you, sir.
You got it. Anything else? You got any questions?
I mean, this is just gonna be one, so like, let's say they find something wrong, like they, like on the last inspection.
Last day of due diligence, they check something out. Yep.
How long is until the next closing? Like, I'm assuming because they have to fix that and then closing day is gonna be rescheduled.
That's gonna be in between, that's gonna be between the parties. So let's say you're coming to buy my house, last day of due diligence is up. And the guy, send your inspector through there and says, hey, these floor joists don't like them, need them repaired. That's probably gonna be a 20-day fix. You can get somebody out there, a 30-day fix, maybe, who knows? It's just whoever you can get out there to call, to get it fixed. What you'll do is then go to the seller, you represent buyer in this case, say, hey, we gotta get this fixed. We either need to get somebody out there to fix it, or, that's where you can start arguing, hey, it's gonna cost 10 grand to fix this. Not, 10 grand off the sales price. After that, we'll overlook it, and I'll send my boy out here and fix it. Again, a lot of that you can contract, you're negotiating. But that's how that's gonna work out. Does that make sense? Yeah. Perfect. What else we got? Like I said, I got plenty of time, y'all. If you got any questions? And if not, if something comes up and you say, hey, I need to ask that guy something again, there's my phone number. Please feel free to call me. My name's Carter. If you can't get a hold of me, Emily will pick up the phone, Amy, any of them, we're always glad to help. With anything that you need. So, everybody feeling good? Okay, we'll call it. I'll get out there. Do some contracts. Do some contracts. So you're going to just fine. Thank you. Cool. And you read this when you get home tonight. Thank you. Go over that a couple of times. I'm gonna tell you, if you can figure out and at least have a general idea of all the sections in that contract. You all know. Because I can tell you how many